Hi, this is Hiromi from Refactor, and today I wanted to talk about a simple way to create a tile transition in Motion 5 that we could use in Final Cut Pro 10. Basically, we had a client that wanted to mimic the animation from their mobile application and use it as a transition in some of their marketing video. So here's one way that we could accomplish that. So first off, we could open up Motion and we get our project browser. And because we're going to create a Final Cut transition, we could use that template there and double click on that. And when the template opens, notice that it creates a group for us with two layers. The first layer, transition A, represents the clip that we'll be transitioning from, and then transition B represents the clip that we'll be transitioning to. And because we want to start revealing the layers beneath right away, we're going to drag both of those transitions so that they cover the entire timeline. Next, we just want to create a shape that's going to represent a part of that grid or that tile that we want to make. So in my case, that's just a square, a tile. And so I'm just going to go down to my shape tool and draw a square. So it doesn't really matter where I put this shape because we're just going to reference this shape. But I do kind of want it to be square, so I'm going to draw it on the grid here. And then I'm going to drag that layer outside the layer group for organization purposes. Now I want to replicate this shape. So in the lower right, that atom looking icon, click that. That creates a replicator. And that will automatically replicate that shape we had selected in a 5x5 grid. And then we can animate it. So I'm going to drag it out, make it the full size. Now, because this is going to form the basis for transition A, I want it to fill the full frame. So I'm going to go into the inspector on the left. And I want to put some more columns in there because that'll hopefully flesh it out some more. It looks like 8 columns is about right. 5 rows looks good, but we still have all these gaps in here, so I need to make the initial shape a little bigger. So under cell controls, I'm going to drag the scale up. Looks like maybe to about 114, 115, somewhere in there. That's looking pretty good. So maybe 116. So now, because we want to rotate the shape, give it the appearance of flipping, we're going to want to check this box here in the replicator controls under 3D because we want to move it in 3D space. And now we got a couple more options, but we can leave most of this the same. One of the reasons we wanted to create this from scratch is that the client requested that the tiles animate from the lower left corner and kind of animate their way up the screen, across and up. So we're going to accomplish this in this origin pull down. We can select from here the lower left. Then we get an additional build style menu and we can choose by row to animate across the rows. So good. Now we have our grid, but it doesn't animate yet. So to make it animate, to make the grid move, we're going to go down into the behaviors menu here, the icon that looks like a little gear. And then we'll select replicator, sequence replicator. And now in our behaviors inspector, we can add some parameters to animate our grid. So first we might add rotation, a rotation parameter. We can expand that rotation menu, and let's change the y-axis to 90 because I want it to flip from left to right. So we change that to 90 degrees, but now you notice as we scrub through the timeline, you can still see the tiles, the profile, because we're in 3D space and we're seeing some perspective there. So you could probably fix this a few different ways, but an easy way would be to go into our parameters again and add a parameter for opacity and set that to 0. So now we're saying that when you're done rotating 90 degrees, we also want it to animate the opacity down to 0%. And that looks pretty good. So now you'll notice that when you scrub through the timeline though, everything's kind of taking turns going through the rows. And that's fine if that's the effect we want. But I kind of want to spread this animation out a little more so that the next row is starting before the last row is done. So I'll go into the spread parameter and bump that up to maybe around 15. You could change it to taste. And then also I might modify my easing so that the movement looks a little more natural. Now as I scrub through the timeline, things are looking more natural and it looks like the next row starts before the last row is done. And that's exactly what I want. So now we need to figure out, well, how do we turn this animated shape into something that will affect our transition layers? Well, we do that by right-clicking on our top transition layer, transition A in this case, and selecting Add Image Mask. And this creates a blank image mask that's associated with transition A. Notice there's no mask source. So we can go drag our group that has our replicator in it right into the image mask. And voila, the image mask is now referencing that replicator shape and animation so that we have exactly the transition that we were looking for. So that's it. The transition is basically done. One thing we could maybe do, though, is sometimes you like to modify parameters from within Final Cut. And to do that, we'll have to publish those parameters. So there's a little select next to each parameter. We could drop down that menu and select Publish. We might want to modify later the number of columns, rows. The client might also come back and say, oh, I changed my mind. I want to animate from right to left instead of left to right. So maybe we should publish the origin and build style parameters. And then also we might want to publish the scale so that we can get rid of any gaps in case any are more visible in Final Cut. But that's it. So now the transition is done. We can Command S to save the transition. And a little dialog comes up. We can name it what we want. I'm going to name mine here. And select a category if you want. Theme. I'm not going to include any unused media because I don't have any. But I would like to save a preview movie and publish. When that's done processing, we can open up Final Cut Pro, and here we can click on the transitions browser, and if we gave it a category, we could click on that category and we'll see our transition as we named it. And we just drag it right into the timeline between the clips that we want to have this transition on. And if you select the transition, you'll notice that up in the upper right in the inspection browser, all the parameters that we published are there for us to edit. So that's it, a relatively simple way to create a fully customizable transition from InMotion 5 for Final Cut Pro 10. I hope that was useful for you. If you have any way that you would have improved on that process, I'd love to hear about it. Thanks for watching.